It's 1969, a humid summer night somewhere in America. The streetlights flicker, casting long shadows across empty parking lots. The asphalt still radiates heat from the day, waves of warmth rising into the thick air. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks. A screen door slams shut. Two cars sit side by side at a red light. One driver grips the wheel, glances over, and hears it. A deep, thunderous rumble. Not high-pitched, not refined, not the delicate hum of European engineering or the whine of something trying too hard. Just raw, heavy power shaking the ground itself. The kind of sound that makes your ribcage vibrate. The kind that tells you something serious is sitting under that hood. Something angry, something waiting. The light turns green, and in less than 5 seconds, it's over. The other car isn't just beaten, it's humiliated. Left sitting there, shrinking in the mirror, watching taillights disappear into the darkness like they were never even competition. Because under the hood of that Mopar is something most people didn't fully understand at the time, the 440 Magnum. But what almost nobody knows is this engine wasn't supposed to become a legend. It wasn't built to dominate headlines. It wasn't designed in some secret racing lab by engineers chasing glory. It wasn't even Chrysler's most exotic design. So how did a big, heavy, iron block V8 become one of the most feared street engines of all time? And why, decades later, does it still carry a reputation that refuses to die? To understand that, you have to go back to the beginning. Back to a time when horsepower wasn't just a number on a spec sheet, it was a war. A full-scale arms race between Detroit's biggest names, and casualties were everywhere. Broken axles, destroyed transmissions, reputations left smoking on the starting line. The late 1960s were brutal in the American auto industry. Ford had the 428 Cobra Jet, a monster that came out of nowhere and shocked the racing world. Chevy was pushing the 427 and the 396, engines that carried their own legends into battle. Pontiac had the Ram Air Series. Even AMC was trying to get in on the action. And Chrysler? Chrysler had something different. They didn't chase complexity. They didn't obsess over high-revving finesse or fancy European-inspired engineering. They didn't care about impressing magazine writers with revolutionary designs. They built torque monsters. Simple, brutal, effective. At the center of it all was Chrysler's RB engine family, raised block. The name came from the taller deck height compared to their B-Series engines, allowing for longer strokes and bigger displacement. And the biggest, meanest version of that family was the 440 cubic inch V8. With a massive 4.32-inch bore and a 3.75-inch stroke, the 440 displaced exactly 7.2 liters. That's huge, even by today's standards. For perspective, that's larger than most modern truck engines. That's more displacement than some boats. But size alone wasn't the magic. Plenty of big engines existed. Plenty of them were slow. Plenty of them were lazy, overweight, underpowered disappointments. The 440 Magnum, introduced in 1967, was built for one thing: brutal, instant power. In its early high-performance form, it ran a 10.11 compression ratio, high enough to squeeze every ounce of energy from the premium fuel of the era. It used a single Carter AVS 4-barrel carburetor. Nothing fancy. No dual quads, no exotic intake setups, no complicated vacuum systems that mechanics would curse at for decades. Just one big carburetor, feeding one big engine, making one big statement. And yet, it made 375 horsepower. More importantly, it made 480 lb-ft of torque. Read that number again, 480 lb-ft. And that torque didn't come at 6,000 RPM where only racers would ever see it. It came low, around 3,200 RPM, right where the street lived, right where real driving happened, which meant the moment you touched the throttle, it hit hard. No waiting, no building, no delay while the engine wound up to its power band. Just immediate, violent thrust that pinned you to the seat and put your stomach somewhere near your spine. Most people don't realize this, but on the street, torque wins races. Not horsepower numbers printed in magazines, not bragging rights at car shows. Torque. Because torque is what moves the car right now. It's what breaks the tires loose. It's what makes that first second off the line feel like a rocket launch, and Chrysler understood that better than anyone. But there was a problem. Early big block Mopars had a reputation, not for weakness, but for being a little too wild. Drivers complained about traction. Tires would spin endlessly, even on dry pavement. You'd mash the gas and find yourself going sideways instead of forward. Rear ends would break loose at the worst moments. And transmissions? They weren't always happy handling that kind of torque. Clutches would slip. Gears would grind. Entire drivetrains would surrender under the pressure. One engineer reportedly joked, "We didn't build an engine, we built a problem." And that problem was about to get bigger. By 1968 and 1969, the muscle car war reached its absolute peak. Every manufacturer was pushing harder, faster, louder. Magazine covers featured new power claims every month. Drag strips were packed every weekend. And on the streets? Well, the streets had become proving grounds where reputations were made or destroyed in 11 seconds flat. So Chrysler doubled down. They introduced the 440 Magnum into some of their most iconic cars. The Dodge Charger, that long, muscular fastback that looked fast, standing still. The Plymouth Road Runner, affordable, stripped down, pure muscle with a sense of humor. The GTX, the gentleman's muscle car, luxurious but lethal. These weren't lightweight cars. A Charger could weigh over 3,800 pounds. That's nearly 2 tons of steel, glass, and American ambition. But with a 440 under the hood, weight didn't matter. The engine simply didn't care. It had torque to spare. It could move that mass like it was nothing. A typical 440 Magnum-powered car could run the quarter mile in around 13.5 seconds at 105 mph, completely stock, with street tires, with air conditioning, with a full tank of gas and the spare tire still in the trunk. And with minor tuning, open headers to let it breathe, better tires for traction, a slight carburetor adjustment, some attention to the timing, you were looking at low 13s, sometimes even high 12s. In 1969, that was serious performance. That was the kind of number that made people nervous. That was the kind of time that meant you weren't just racing anymore, you were competing. But here's where things get interesting, because Chrysler didn't stop at the standard 440 Magnum. In 1969, they created something even more aggressive, something that would become legendary in its own right, the 440 six-pack. Instead of a single 4-barrel carburetor, the six-pack used 3 2-barrel Holley carbs mounted on an aluminum Edelbrock intake manifold, 2 outboard carbs for full throttle, 1 center carb for normal driving and idle. The setup was elegant in its simplicity. During cruising, only the center carburetor worked, providing decent fuel economy and smooth operation. But when you buried the throttle, vacuum actuators opened the outer 2 carbs, flooding the engine with fuel and air. On paper, it made 390 horsepower. But most insiders knew that number was conservative, way conservative. Chrysler had good reasons to underrate their engines. Insurance companies were watching, regulations were coming, and nobody wanted to draw too much attention. Real output was likely over 410 horsepower, maybe 420, with torque still hovering near 490 lb-ft. And the difference on the street? It was violent. Drivers described it as a second punch when the outer carbs kicked in. One moment you're accelerating, thinking you've got the measure of the car, thinking you understand what's happening. Then the outer carbs open, and the car surges forward like it's been hit from behind by something enormous, like the hand of some automotive god just shoved you toward the horizon. Some people called it intoxicating, others called it terrifying. Both were right. But with that kind of power came new problems. At high RPM, oil control became critical. The 440 used a traditional wet sump system, just like most street engines. And under hard acceleration, especially in drag racing scenarios, oil could slosh away from the pickup toward the back of the pan. That meant momentary drops in oil pressure. At idle, that's nothing. At 5,500 RPM under full load, that's dangerous. Bearings could starve for lubrication. Heat would build instantly. Metal would touch metal. And in extreme cases, engines would fail, catastrophically. The kind of failure that sends rods through the block and leaves you crying on the side of the road. Mechanics started seeing it firsthand at dealerships across the country. One Mopar technician later said, "We pulled pans and found metal flakes everywhere. Not chunks. Chunks mean you broke something. Dust, fine metal dust, the kind that tells you something's wearing out fast. Something's dying in there slowly." So Chrysler made quiet improvements. No press releases, no marketing fanfare, just engineering refinements that showed up in mid-year production runs. They refined oil passages for better flow, improved windage trays to keep oil from climbing the crankshaft, adjusted tolerances in the rotating assembly, specified better bearing materials for high-stress applications. Not flashy changes, but critical ones. Because when you're dealing with a cast iron block that big, spinning a forged steel crankshaft at 5,000 RPM, holding together under nearly 500 lb-ft of torque, everything has to be just right. Every clearance, every tolerance, every tiny detail. And when it was, the 440 became nearly unstoppable. But the real turning point didn't happen on some quiet suburban street at midnight. It happened on the track. In NASCAR, Chrysler used the 440 as a base for their race engines, and while the legendary 426 Hemi grabbed most of the headlines, won most of the championships, and earned most of the glory, the 440 was the workhorse. Reliable, consistent, brutally effective. Teams could build a 440-based race engine faster and cheaper than a Hemi. They could maintain it with less specialized knowledge, and in endurance situations, it just kept running. At tracks like Daytona and Talladega, cars powered by big block Mopars were hitting speeds over 190 km/h. Think about that, 190 miles per hour in 1969. With 1960s tire technology, 1960s aerodynamics, 1960s safety equipment, and the engines held together, lap after lap, hour after hour, mile after mile. That's what mattered, because in racing, power means nothing if you don't finish. The fastest car in the field is just a pretty sculpture if it's sitting in the garage with a blown engine while the checkered flag waves, and the 440 finished. But back on the street, its legend was growing for a different reason entirely: accessibility. The 426 Hemi was incredible. Nobody could deny that. But it was expensive. Really expensive. It was rare. Most dealerships never even saw one. And insurance companies? Insurance companies hated it. They'd see Hemi on the paperwork and double your rates instantly. But the 440 Magnum, you could get it in a wide range of cars. It showed up on option sheets that normal people could actually afford. It was cheaper to buy, cheaper to insure, easier to maintain. Your local mechanic understood it. Parts were available at regular auto stores, and it was almost as fast as the Hemi in real-world conditions. On the street, with imperfect traction and human reaction times, the difference was minimal. So regular people, young drivers saving up from summer jobs, street racers with more courage than money, weekend gearheads who just wanted something fast, got their hands on it, and they pushed it hard. They modified them with headers and hotter cams. They swapped carburetors and adjusted timing. They put sticky tires on the back and took them to the local strip every Saturday night. Street races became stories. Stories became myths. Myths became legends passed down at car shows and swap meets. You hear about that guy with the 440? Took down a Camaro and a Mustang in the same night. Same night. Didn't even break a sweat. Yeah, but did you hear what happened next? Because what happened next was always something wild. Burnouts that lasted entire blocks. Tire smoke so thick you couldn't see the streetlights. Rear tires shredded in minutes, cords showing through the rubber. Drive shafts twisted under load like taffy. Rear axles snapping at the worst possible moment. The 440 didn't just win races, it created moments. Moments people never forgot. Moments they told their grandchildren about. Moments that defined entire summers, entire friendships, entire lives. But then, everything changed. By the early 1970s, the world shifted beneath the muscle car's wheels. The Clean Air Act arrived with new teeth. Emissions regulations tightened across the country. Rising insurance costs made high-performance cars increasingly unaffordable for the young buyers who wanted them most. The OPEC oil crisis loomed on the horizon, about to reshape American automotive priorities completely. High-compression engines like the 440 Magnum couldn't survive in their original form. They needed unleaded gasoline that didn't exist yet in compatible form. Their emissions were unacceptable under new standards. Their fuel economy was laughable. Compression ratios dropped from 10.11 to around 8.2.1. Horsepower numbers fell off a cliff. By 1972, the once mighty 440 was rated at around 280 horsepower, using the new net rating system that replaced the old gross figures. A massive drop, a humiliating fall from grace. And just like that, the muscle car era began to fade. Production slowed. Performance versions disappeared from option sheets. The six-pack vanished. The Magnum designation became meaningless. By the late 1970s, the 440 was gone entirely. No dramatic farewell, no final victory lap, no commemorative editions or special send-offs, just gone, quietly discontinued, another casualty of changing times. But here's the thing about legends: they don't disappear, they evolve. They hibernate, they wait, they live on in garages and barns and memories, patient as stone, waiting for their moment to return. Because years later, enthusiasts started bringing the 440 back, rebuilding them with modern knowledge, modifying them with technology Chrysler's engineers couldn't have imagined, pushing them even further than the factory ever dared. With modern camshafts designed by computer simulation, improved aluminum cylinder heads that flowed far better than the original castings, electronic fuel injection systems, and modern ignition technology, a rebuilt 440 could easily make 500 horsepower. Some builds pushed past 600, some reached for 700, all while keeping that same character, that same low-end torque that made it legendary in the first place, that same brutal, unmistakable feel that planted you in the seat and made you grin like an idiot. And in the collector world, original 440 Magnum cars became highly sought after. Dodge Chargers with matching numbers, Plymouth Road Runners with original paint, GTX with documented history. The rarer, the better. The more original, the more valuable. Prices climbed, then climbed again, then exploded entirely. Because people weren't just buying cars, they were buying a feeling. That moment at the red light, that instant when the engine roars, and everything else fades away. All the stress of daily life, all the compromises of adulthood, all the mundane responsibilities that pile up year after year, gone. Just you, the engine, and the road ahead. So why did the 440 Magnum become a street legend? It wasn't the most advanced engine, it wasn't the rarest, and it definitely wasn't the most refined, but it delivered something most engines couldn't: raw, immediate, overwhelming power. The kind you feel in your chest before you hear it with your ears. The kind that breaks traction without warning and reminds you that you're not fully in control. The kind that turns an ordinary car into something unforgettable. That's what made it special. That's what made it feared. And that's why, even today, the sound of a 440 Magnum still stops people in their tracks. Because they know something serious is coming. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments what engine you want to see next. Another muscle car legend? A forgotten failure? Something European? Something Japanese? Or something even crazier that nobody's ever covered? And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might be even louder.